right. So thanks everyone for joining us once again. As I mentioned a minute ago, if you just came on board, I see a bunch of people trickling in. There's some poll questions. We'd love to know a little bit about you, so please check those out and answer them. And at any time, if you have questions, you can ask us a question. We will be monitoring them, and likely towards the end, we will be asking them. So before we get to our guests of honor, Tiffany, I'm just going to give a little bit of information about Hostfully for those who don't know. I think I see a lot of Hostfully customers on here, so that's great. Thanks for joining. So, first, just quick agenda. So as I said, Hostfully summary, and then we'll hand it over to Tiffany, and Tiffany will talk about both VRMA and the Right to Rent program and how you all can participate in that. So a little background on Hostfully. We have two software platforms, or property management software. We like to say property management platform, as well as digital guidebooks. So you can have one, you can have the other, you can have both. We have lots of customers that use our beautiful digital guidebooks with other property management software, so keep that in mind. Our guidebooks help you provide all the information that you need to your guests. It's a simple URL that you can include in your email messages, in your Airbnb messages, in your SMS messages, and looks great on any device. It's got all the information they need to know, from check-in details to directions to house rules and other house information, your favorite local recommendations, and it's a great way to earn extra revenue. We have integration with Viator to get commissions on local tours and activities, and other ways of upselling your own items like early check-in, mid-stay cleaning, late checkout, stuff like that. Our property management platform, we help you run your business tip to tail. So all areas of managing a property management company, from channel integrations to email templates and triggers to having a direct booking website, having an owner's portal, lots of integrations with other vendors in the industry. So we'd love to share more information about that. If you're interested, let me know. And we're good at it too. So we've won a whole bunch of awards. We're the only property management software in the United States that's a preferred partner for Airbnb, Booking.com, and Vrbo. So that is them saying our integrations are the best, not us bragging about that. And we've also won lots of other industry awards, the Keystone Awards, the 2 years they've had it. We've been the winner of that for Best Property Management Software. That's done by Matt Landau, who just did an interview with Tiffany. So you got to check that out as well. And we also won the Shorties Award this past year for Best Property Management Software. So excited to be the incumbent Best PMS for the two biggest industry awards. And we also like to provide content like these webinars for the community. So please check out our website. We have a reports section, lots of white papers and other reports. Our annual hospitality report is a big deal, and lots of other information that might be able to help you run your business, as well as past webinars that we've done. And we are so thrilled to be part of the Right to Rent program. So Tiffany, thank you very much for letting Hostfully be a part of this. Tiffany's going to get into details of what exactly that means. Not to steal her thunder, at a high level, you can contribute to VRMA's advocacy fund, and we make it easy for you to do that. So there is a setting in Hostfully, just a little checkbox to turn it on to opt into the program. And when that happens, a report automatically gets created in your report section. And it is basically a report of every reservation. And you can choose $1, $2, or $3 that you want to donate. And that will appear in the report. And that gets sent at the beginning of the next month to VRMA. And then you send over the money. So it's really that easy, just a checkbox that you check, and then once a month sending over the money. Okay, so that is a good segue to hand it over to Tiffany. Tiffany, thanks for joining us. How are you doing, Tiffany?
I'm great. I'm very excited about this. And I'd love to learn a little bit more about everyone who is on the call today. So if you haven't had a chance to do the polling questions, please do so now. Just gives me a little bit better understanding of how to frame some things that we might want to spend a little bit more time on today. David, you went through that so fast. I'm a little worried about how much time I've got now, but we've got so much to talk about, and the chat box is there. Bryce is going to be monitoring that, so feel free if you have any questions, right to rent advocacy related, VRMA related, put them in there, and I'll try to answer as many as I can. Do we want to give a minute or so for the polling, or?
Sure, people can answer the polling questions. You should see those. Looks like we've got some answers coming in. Thank you.
All right. And I'm going to go ahead and start talking just a little about who I am. So it gives me a little credibility for government relations. So again, my name is Tiffany Edwards. I cannot thank y'all enough for allowing me to come on today and for Hostfully really just taking the ball and running with it. David and his team has worked so hard on making sure that we could have this integration system. And I'll explain a little bit more about the importance of right to rent and how great it is for our industry as a whole to protect our ability to keep our businesses open, to protect the assets that we have in our industry. But my background, I was born and raised actually in the vacation rental industry. My mother has a 40-year-old company, and I have been part of that from the beginning parts in the laundry of folding towels up to property management to housekeeping to inspection. So much like many of you, I've done it all, but I realized that I did not want to, probably unlike you, I realized I did not want to deal too much with the guests and with the owners. So I decided to go into politics, which is, I don't know, the best bet, but went into politics and was a lobbyist for several years, worked for different elected officials, and then really specialized in fundraising. So a couple years ago, I became director of donor services for VRMA when they decided that they really wanted to build a robust advocacy fund. That fund is to help fundraise and support different economic impact studies, affordable housing studies, grant opportunities for our members. We started out a couple years ago at 30,000, and I'm proud to announce that this year we've hit over 600,000. Already year to date, we've given away almost 200,000 in applications, grant awards and applications. So if you're interested and you have an issue in your area and are looking for some funds for marketing, for your own studies, please feel free to contact us, and we'll be happy to get you an application. So I've been doing that for several years, but while $600,000 sounds like a lot of money, it's not necessarily in comparison to some of our opponents that are out there actively working against our industry. So before I get into a little bit of that, I want to tell you a little bit about who VRMA is. Also a little known fact, my mom was one of the first VRMA members back in the late 80s. That's when they allowed everyone to come for free and would actually pay for the rentals or not the rentals, but the reservations for the conference. So this year we're looking at over 2,000 people at our conference. So you're not really looking for a free stay, but we do still have, first and foremost, the pillars of VRMA is education and advocacy. And you guys have a great leader in David. He's been on the Governmental Affairs Committee for 2 years, I think now, and a great support system and voice for most of you on there. VRMA represents several different members. So it's a supplier group. It also is homeowners. Doesn't matter how many units that you have, and then also larger property managers. We provide education. We have certification system that you can go through, networking opportunities, webinars, and just a lot of different things as a centralized voice for the industry. The also important part is that it's a nonprofit. So when we talk about coming in and speaking with elected officials and legislators, it's really important that you have a centralized base that is a nonprofit. It's helpful when you talk about the industry and you have one voice that it drives through. If you think about the hotel association, or sometimes maybe your restaurant and lodging in your state, the realtors, it's very impactful, maybe even the chamber associations. It's very impactful at a state level and sometimes on those localized levels to have a nonprofit association speaking on the talking points for our industry. So I will talk a little bit then, now that we understand kind of who VRMA is, and some of you may already know who they are. I want to talk a little bit about how we were impacted coming through the pandemic. Most of you have already experienced or had to experience that. So the turn off, the come back on, what it has looked like in your local areas, regulations that have changed, sentiments in the community that have changed. But what we realized really during this time is the hotels have always been organized. And one of the ways that they've always been organized is they had a revenue system that has been an add-on. So they have much larger pockets. And because of that, they have a lot of lobbying, they have a lot of activity, they can produce studies and have built up networks. So if you've noticed all over the country, there were a lot of places that opened up for hotels but did not open up for short-term rentals. And if you'll do a little research on each state, you can see kind of what the outspend is, not just on campaigns, but just in general what they've raised for their efforts. So right to rent is something we've always talked about within the industry of how can we bring together a lot of funds for specific projects, legislative tracking, lobbying. But we didn't know exactly how we could do this. We knew there were a lot of players involved. There's homeowners, there's property managers, there's suppliers, but we didn't know the easy way to make sure, and especially guests, the easy way to make sure that everyone could stay involved. So we've always talked that maybe $1 per reservation would be great because that's something similar to what the hotels do. But we've never had the full buy-on from softwares until recently. And so recently, the suppliers have all come to us and said, how can we get more involved and how can we help protect this industry? And that's pretty much how Right to Rent became a program. So it's been in process for about a year. We're launching now with Hostfully. We're so grateful. But what it is it's your choice of an add-on donation, and it's a $1 add-on donation to each reservation. And then that gets collected once the reservation is realized, and that money goes to this VRMA Right to Rent fund. For that fund, it helps pay for a lot of different items. So we have professional support for managers and owners to defend their business. We have issue tracking. Since January, we've had over 60,000 notifications, I think it is, for our different ordinances and tracking to follow. It's response to legislative concerns, lobbying with state and local officials on policy, and then also a national focus. So what we've decided with these funds is that we have it split up as a 40-40-20 split. So 40 would be for national efforts. We have launched in VRMA a professional campaign to define what a professional is. So it's tax-paying, local, and consistent and high standards. And so each person or each company can talk about how they fall into those three categories. Pushing that out into national media sources, but also providing talking points and social media content along those lines. Part of that money could go to some of those efforts, could go to some of those studies, but then also 40% into regional efforts, right? So what does that look like? Is that studies that need to be done in your regional area? Is that lobbying or consulting that needs to be done in your regional area? And then 20% into a reserve. So in case a pandemic or something else happens, you have that 20% there. These are really important, items that we are overall very expensive, that not only to try to push our industry forward in a proactive sense, we want to get away from the reaction, right? The reactive response to negative legislation. We want to try to be proactive in some of this. And so building up this money and this fund through a nonprofit like VRMA helps with one voice with everyone under the same umbrella. The other good news is that if you are not a VRMA member, and I don't know if all of the polling has come through yet or not, but if you are not a VRMA member, you do get a free year membership with VRMA by signing on, which is a huge, huge benefit. We also feel that you're donating to this cause. You should have access to all that VRMA has to offer. And that's not just for the Right to Rent program. That's to all of our education, our webinars, our conferences that come through. And we want to make sure that we provide each other with enough networking opportunities and mentor opportunities. David and I had this discussion earlier, but most people have to deal with the same issues. They're just different in how they're handled in each local jurisdiction. And one of the things that's so great with VRMA is being able to connect with other people who may have gone through similar regulations and talking through that. And so having this membership and having access to some of these town halls like we did yesterday, or members who might be having similar ordinance fights, it's very helpful. The other thing that we have in VRMA that we're launching this year that you'll have access to as a member is our advocacy toolkit. So this is a one-stop shop that will have everything that you need in terms of how-tos, which is for testimonies, different ordinance language. How do you start a PAC? How do you look through fire and safety? It's different case studies of other VRMA members that have maybe gone through litigation or have gone through ballot initiatives. So it'll all be in one spot. The other thing it'll have is almost every state statute. So the definition for a state statute, you'll find in a lot of times with ordinances that local ordinances will create a new definition that is in direct conflict of a state, and they'll try to push it through. So you'll have a resource right there to look at what is that state definition? What are my requirements? What are my tax requirements? But the other part that's really important about this toolkit is that we're creating it for several different visitors. And one of them is for elected officials. And we're trying to optimize so that elected officials, a lot of them don't understand our industry, but they have one place that they can go to and look up any of the questions that they may have about the industry. So there'll be a non-member facing for elected officials and just for general information. And then there'll be a back-end member facing. And this will also hold a lot of our studies. So we have 3 economic impact studies coming out this year. We did 7 affordable housing studies last year. So this will hold a lot of that information. I think are there some questions while I'm going through there?
Yeah, actually, Tiffany, a couple membership related questions. One is kind of more for our international friends, specifically Canada. Just wondering if VRMA operates there, or if not, if you know of any advocacy groups there.
So I would have to find out the specific location. There are some advocacy groups in Canada, and we do have some members in the Canada area.
Okay, great.
But
great, thank you. And if anyone wanted to learn more about how they can get involved or participate or help with VRMA and with advocacy, is there a good place for them to go to learn about that?
Yes, so that's my email right there. Please email me directly, and I'd love to learn a little bit more about your specific maybe interest, regulation, location. And then I can definitely get you in touch with the right individual. There's so, advocacy is so broad and we use it in so many terms, but we would love to have as many people participate as possible. And part of it is really even connecting members to members. We also have the fundraising, side of it. We have conversations that go into the marketing or for the toolkit or the legislation. So would love to have any participation as possible. And I please encourage you to email me as well.
Great. I think that's it for now.
Thank you, Tiffany. I've seen, so I think there are a couple other questions. And if anyone has questions, you can ask them in the questions section. So please ask away. I have seen a sneak preview of the advocacy toolkit, and it's really amazing what you've done to help empower local grassroots efforts to combat harmful legislation. I know that was a big undertaking, and that's a great example of what you all are doing to just put resources out there and help the industry nationwide and beyond.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, it's going to grow and grow. One of the things I talked to someone yesterday, we don't want to keep reinventing the wheel. A lot of people right now are having to deal with ballot initiatives. There should be a source that we can go on and look and say, what does a mailer look like? What should I put on there? We're all working full time, and we can only offer so much time for some of these issues. Being proactive is great. We feel like that's part of our responsibility as as an association, is to drive that positive conversation about our industry. But we want to make sure that when we are being reactive, that we have the tools there. So you have the ability to have data collection, have some consulting with some lobbying efforts, have your talking points ready, and that we're all speaking in the same voice and under the same kind of definitions.
So related to that last question, if I'm a property manager in a city where there isn't any legislation issues going on, thankfully, in addition to opting into the Right to Rent program, where I can donate $1 of every reservation to the advocacy fund, what else is there stuff I can do to be proactive? How else can I try to just contribute and help?
Yeah, so that's such a great question, and it's a great question for this time of the year. So we're in the middle of an election cycle. I would say for you to reach out, do not be scared to do this, but to email or call any of the candidates that maybe you don't know, and introduce yourself, potentially sit for coffee and tell them a little bit about the industry. I also think that it's really important to send proactive communication. So if you do have a relationship with any elected official, and this also includes staff, I should mention that staff can be some of your greatest assets through these conversations, but sending in proactive data, right? So having an understanding overall of what the sentiment is in your area, especially if you're in an area where it's been peak season, right? And there's fatigue. Looking at really what is occupancy still up? What did it look like? Where did your feeder markets come from? Did it change from last year? Sending in some of that information that maybe your elected officials may be concerned about, you can look all of that up through your software system. So having those ongoing conversations are really helpful. The other thing is that if you do have any type of a relationship with an elected official, or if you don't, if you see something that they've done great in the community, send them a little note. Let them know, thank you so much for doing this. I have a business here. I'd love to talk to you at any point in time. Or if you ever have any questions about this industry, please feel free to contact me. But those are pretty low-hanging fruit that you can do right now.
Awesome. Those are great tips. I know it's kind of fun putting yourself out there and reaching out and trying to set up a meeting with your local supervisor or representative and getting to talk to them about what you're doing. And it may seem like, no, you're not in politics. That's not what you do, but that's what supervisors and local, assemblymen want to do. They want to meet with their constituents and understand what their business is. And especially in a time where there's not legislation going on, that's the best time to be able to have a meaningful, less stressful and pressured conversation so they know you.
Yeah. And you can't, a lot of people get intimidated by that. You can't. Most elected officials have no idea what our industry is or what all goes on. And if you can introduce yourself as being that point of reference, if something does come up, they're going to call you because they're going to need what your insight is on that issue. So don't be intimidated at all to reach out. And now's kind of the time, whether they're being reelected or not, they're still keeping in mind and being a little bit more active with their constituency. And like I said, again, do not hesitate to call staff. It is always helpful in land planning, the county attorney, the city attorney. Introducing yourself and building up a relationship there is very important.
So Tiffany, you had mentioned that, and David had mentioned, obviously our our Hostfully customers can go ahead and opt in there within the software. And then when that happens, VRMA will be notified that they've done so. But how do they go about actually obtaining their membership? Do they need to do anything else to get that free year membership?
That's such a great question. So we get notification as soon as they sign on. We will be able to identify if they're currently a member or not. And our membership team will call and email them to talk through all of the benefits and make sure that they are in the system. They have all the information that they need, and that they get into our database for all upcoming events, programs, webinars.
That
So
is
pretty easy.
that is super cool of you guys, by the way, to give a free membership, 1 year membership to VRMA for those who are not members yet, and they participate in Right to Rent. I know the membership fees can range anywhere, I think, from $400 to thousands of dollars, depending on your size. So kudos to you for doing that.
Well, again, I think that the whole overall goal, and especially from being involved in the industry, is that we all need to have some type of base that we work from. And I think that one of the most important examples of that is during the shutdown, VRMA came out with the VRHP like cleaning guidelines. And we pushed those out with a lot of elected officials and through our members, and a lot of counties, cities, some of the, even state areas started adopting pieces of that. Having that information, having those webinars, teaching people about it through our membership, but also using it in advocacy sense, then we're all working together towards a common goal.
Awesome. So this might be some talking points in the advocacy toolkit itself. One question that was asked earlier is if you can give an example of either a city or specific points within a city's legislation that had implemented short-term rental regulations that were favorable to property managers. So if there is legislation that is brewing, what specifically should property managers be advocating for?
Well, so it's such a great question. That it really depends more so on your location base. So I've used this example before. I'm based in Florida. We have preemption, so you cannot ban vacation rentals and you cannot regulate duration and frequency of vacation rentals. We also have a property management company in California, so in the Carmel, Monterey County area, where we've had to take up litigation because there was zero ordinance and they were refusing to have short-term rentals or will only do annual rentals there. So it really depends on where location you are and what some of your non-negotiables and what your operating procedures are. I would say that overall for an ordinance, to me, it is, if you do have a registration system, is it something that's easy, that you can easily send in? Is it something that you can, certify and comes back? Is it less cumbersome on you and your staff? But there are a lot of really great locations that have examples. It just depends on what your actual base is. And this toolkit will have that. And please feel free for whoever asked that question to email me. And if you send me your state or location, I'll be happy to send you some examples.
Great, thank you. Are there any tax benefits to this?
Unfortunately, no. It is not a tax write-off. I know, but you cannot, for any type of lobbying consulting, you cannot use that as a tax write-off. So even though it's nonprofit VRMA, but because it's can directly affect ordinances, legislation, what the breakdown is, it is not a tax write-off. Right. But I would suggest still run it through those guests.
Absolutely, and you still get that free VRMA membership too. That'll help.
Yes.
I see a nice comment here. Y'all were great on last year's VRMA panel, along with Steve Milo. What are you planning to do at VRMA this year?
That's a great question. So we actually, in response to our toolkit, we have 2 advocacy sessions. There will be 5 subjects in each with area experts. We basically pulled the 10 greatest requested items from our VRMA membership. So it is how to draft an ordinance, zoning examples, grassroots, stakeholder engagement, fundraising, data collection and how to present data collection, litigation, I'm thinking through some of mine, professionalism and how to market yourself, and consulting, lobbying efforts. And then there's one more, so you'll just have to come to figure out what that last one is. But so we'll have 2 sessions. There'll be roundtables. We will have, everything marked, and then we'll have 1-pagers for each, and contact information for each one of those experts. So if you have a specific interest in zoning or how to draft an ordinance, you can go and sit and meet with someone who's actually successfully done that. Oh, and it's alliance building. That's the last one, alliance building, and how to create a fundraising mechanism for that alliance building. I will also say, going back to that tax question, while it may not be a tax write-off, which I know hurts me too, I do want you to think that if you are a property manager, or if you manage anything outside of your own home, feel free to use what you are doing to protect these assets in your communication tactics. It's very important that people know that you are actively taking a role in the governmental affairs and the advocacy sector. The other part too is, like, please let elected officials know. Say, I'm involved with this. I'm involved with advocacy. I want to be a good steward. I believe in balance and balanced regulations as it relates to our industry.
Great.
See one other question, and please, if anyone else has any questions, feel free to ask. It's amazing how it's grown from, what do you say, $30,000 to $600,000 over the years, but that's still small compared to maybe what the hotel's lobbying efforts are. Can you talk a little bit about what we're up against in some cases? Not that we're necessarily against hotel lobbying, but just what the organization there is, and what that's like as a comparison to the $30,000 to $600,000 you mentioned earlier.
Sure. And, there's a lot of reasons. So, because I don't want to be too negative about it, there's a lot of reasons why the hotel's that way, right? They're regulated in a completely different, sector. A lot of times they're under a different state statute. They're identified as commercial. We never want to be identified as commercial. So they've had the ability over the course of, years and decades to form and to create funds, our funding mechanisms. We have been overall fragmented. People have used us. We're not a new industry, but we're new in terms of people understanding the opportunity to use us and the technology that comes with it. So we are very much up against, if you were to look at Florida during our shutdown in the 2018 cycle, hotels spent over $1 million in that cycle. We spent $70,000. Now, right to rent is not going to go directly towards, campaign. We don't get involved necessarily on that side of it. But it does make a huge difference in terms of having these conversations. But the other part is having the education. Also want to mention too, our study. So we looked at doing an economic impact study for one state, and our first proposal came back at $220,000. So $600,000 is extremely, it's so much money. I'm so proud of it. I'm so honored that we've, been able to do that, and that everyone stepped up to the plate, and really more so from the supplier side. But we want to be able to give funds out where they're needed, and to be very efficient with our funds, but also cost efficient with our funds. So we have entered into an agreement with Oxford Economics to do, like I said, 3 impact studies a year, but we also have a specific cost for it. So we can add in any type of economic impact studies that we want for a better cost, right? So we're creating a template, and we're just turning out states so that all of our members have access to that.
Great. I think that that wraps up the questions. Bryce, anything on your end that I missed, or any comments?
I don't think so, but I have talked to a couple of our customers who maybe can't make it out to the international conference, unfortunately. Tiffany, do you know, as far as some of the regional or other opportunities, what's coming up after international?
Yes, so we do have one in Maine, and I'll have to look to see what the exact date is for that. I do believe that there should be some videos that are some recordings, I believe, for some of them, and also different decks that can be sent. But I think the main is the first one that we've got. We do have Spring Forum next year. I believe it's in Kansas. That will be in the spring, and that will be a pretty good conference as well, pretty well attended with great education.
Great, thanks.
All right. Tiffany, thanks so much for joining us. Any closing comments? Any final things?
I just want to thank everyone for joining for this. Advocacy usually is not a positive thing to talk about. Asking for additional funds is not usually a positive thing to talk about, but it is going to be really great for our industry. And it's something I can't thank Hostfully, and David, I can't thank you enough for really, truly taking the ball. Like I said, I mean, we said we were doing right to rent over a year ago. He said, we want to be a part of this. We're going to do this. And we had a time frame where we were exclusive with Inhabit, who first brought this to the forefront. But the second that it came off, Hostfully had it up and ready. And so I really appreciate everyone being on this, wanting to learn more. If you're on the fence for it, email me. I'll be happy to talk to you more about it. But we just appreciate you guys attending and being a part of this advocacy conversation.
Well, thank you. It's the least we could do, and it's us just putting a couple check boxes and some things in place. Or we are thrilled to be involved, and maybe the first property management software since the exclusive was up. So we're very proud of that. But it's really about the property managers and about them opting in. So property managers who are listening, please. And if you're a Hostfully customer, please go and opt in. It's a very small thing you can do and a very easy thing you can do. If you are not a Hostfully customer, then become a Hostfully customer, and then you can opt in pretty easily to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, and you are right. You are the first after the exclusive, and yeah, we're very, very excited about that. So not every software provides this, and participates and supports the advocacy efforts. So it may be an easy thing for you, but we're very grateful for it.
Awesome. I do see one final question. Oh yes, someone just said they just opted in, so that's awesome. I feel like we're doing a telethon or something.
Like a telethon.
Yeah, exactly. And how do we opt in? If you are a Hostfully customer, go to agency settings and scroll to the bottom, and you'll see a checkbox for opting in. It's that easy, and there's a little help article that gives more information as well. Wonderful. Well, Tiffany, thanks again so much. Really appreciate everything you do for the industry. Thank you for being part of this webinar as well. I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks, and we can celebrate in person.
Yeah. And for anyone else, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Great.
Cheers.
Thanks.